Hey, folks, welcome back to the Mañana No Mas podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to come back to you, this time from Kansas. I'm in Hutchinson, Kansas, which is new, and the background's different. So you know it's official and it's new content. I want to bring to you a new friend for me. I met this gentleman at WordCamp US this year in Maryland. It was a fantastic event, and we had a great conversation about the people he's helping, kind of his drive, his mission, what he's trying to do. And folks, if you don't currently follow Adam Weeks on LinkedIn, I encourage you to connect with him there because I'm connected to him there as well. And we'll have some other things to talk about as this show unfolds. Adam, why don't you go ahead and tell some folks just a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Well, first off, it's an honor to be with you in your brand new digs and new studio. I was excited to meet you as you were getting ready to make this big move. So it's here. It's happened. Congratulations. You made the drive. It worked out.
It's no regrets, man. I can't even. I have a whole hashtag called Escaping California, and it's picking up steam, man. It is picking up steam, and it's
awesome.
just been amazing.
Well, I did escape California for about 4 years, and it sucked me back in. So I am in Northern California. And interestingly enough, if you ask someone that is from California where they're from, typically if they're from Southern California, I don't know if you experience this, they'll just say, oh, I'm from California. But if you talk to someone who is from Northern California, they will specify and they'll say, oh, I am from Northern California, because there's a big difference. California is like 4 states in one. And so if you look on a map, I am in the little town of Auburn, the foothills of Tahoe, between Sacramento and Tahoe. So we're just up there. But yeah, I had been before here. We've only been here a couple of years, but I was up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And whew, that was a nice place. I do miss the seasons and the weather there. But as they say, you do not get to pick where your family is from, and more specifically, where your wife's family is from. And they are here, and that was a very strong magnet. And it's actually a really nice area as far as California goes. We're kind of up in the hills a bit, so people don't bother us too much. But yeah,
I just drove through Tahoe couple months ago, and I was going from Salt Lake City to Monterey. I was working for the Marine Retailers Association, and I had a great 4 or 5 days in Salt Lake City area. You know, I went camping up there. People that follow me know the way that I travel. I travel in a truck or camper van. I take my mountain bike with me, and I find these really cool places to hide away and still get work done.
nice.
And man, I just had an awesome time there. And then I traveled. It was the first time I've driven by Tahoe a dozen times, but I never stopped to look at it. And so I stopped and I looked, and I was like, man, what a pretty place. You know, it's a shame it's in California.
That's the problem. Well, it's partially not. It's there's a chunk of it that's in Nevada. So you know, it's right on that border. But
Dual
yeah,
citizenship.
it's a great place to be. You can definitely go at the wrong time, and ironically, when it's the most beautiful is the wrong time in the summer, because it's just stupid crowded. But right now in the fall is really a good time to visit Tahoe. So yeah, we try to get up there a little bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we did. Have you heard of Harvest Host? Because we did this big road trip around the country. In between up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and being here in Auburn in California, we did like a year-long road trip where I homeschooled the kids, about a big Jayco Seneca Super C motorhome, pulled the Jeep behind us with a bunch of bikes, and this thing called Harvest Host. It's this membership. It's like an annual subscription, and instead of like staying the night in a Walmart or Cracker Barrel or something, people who have good big parking lots but don't use them at nighttime, such as golf courses, museums, vineyards, different places like that, you can stay in their parking lots for free. You just kind of message them up saying, hey, can we come spend the night? Sure, no problem. There's not hookups typically, but they ask you if they have a store, spend $20 or something. But like, we stayed at an alpaca farm. We were in like Vermont and the back east, and we stayed at a cranberry bog, like all kinds of just random places, but met really neat people while we're doing that. So if you're on big road trips, Harvest Host, that is my recommendation. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about today.
No, it's awesome. I was looking at one where it's all wineries. Like you do a winery tour, and
Yeah,
they let you stay at the winery, and then of
right.
course you do the
That's
wine
basically
tasting.
this. So they will add, like, if you it's wineries mostly, but then I think that's how they started. But then they've started adding some of these other things. So yeah, we actually broke down once. It was over 4th of July weekend. I'm like, there's no place, we're not gonna be able to stay. And there happened to be a very nice winery not far away. The tow truck driver drove us to the winery, and they said, sure, you can stay. It was lovely. It worked out perfectly. But yeah, you can add on, like I said, golf courses and stuff. But yeah, Harvest Host, that's my pick.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's get into what we talked about in Maryland. You have a
Yeah,
project now that you are, knee deep or hip deep in, and you're getting exposure for some other folks in the industry.
yeah,
So let's chat about that.
yeah. I love, so Cirrus Influence is the name of our PR agency specifically for WordPress. So the real quick of it is that WordPress being as decentralized as it is, you can do your work from anywhere in the world, as we are evident of. The problem is that in other industries, you have an app store. You've got a place for people to go to buy your stuff. WordPress doesn't have that. It's all over the world, and there's not really one place to go. So we met in person. So we go to the WordCamps. So those are an important part for especially product companies in WordPress to make sure that they're getting exposure at.
Yeah.
But where should you be during the rest of the time? How do you get your name out to the community? And that's kind of where we come in. My background is in education. So I was a school principal for a number of years, but I always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I started a small marketing company, which is still going. It's kind of for specifically for private schools, church schools, and that happens. And while I was building that out, I asked a friend of mine, Jonathan Wold, like, "Hey, Jonathan, I'm trying to build this company, but sales. How do you do sales? This is something new to me." And he said, "Well, how about you come help me?" And at the time, he was working with Post Status. Are you familiar with Post
Yep.
Status?
Yeah.
So Post Status, it's kind of the professional organization for the WordPress community. And I helped him sell memberships and sponsorships for a while, kind of got to know the community, met up with a bunch of really neat people. And during that time, and I still wear that hat. I got my Post Status, hat somewhere back here, and I help people with their sponsorships. If you want to do that, it's great. I also ended up helping Bob Dunn with Do the Woo, and I still help Bob with his sponsorships. But what I was realizing is that a number of these clients were looking for more. They didn't want to put necessarily all their eggs in that basket. Maybe they weren't ready for a single sponsorship. And what we discovered is that PR is missing from WordPress, so public relations. And that's the earned media. So essentially, you have the earned media where we're doing what we're doing right now. I didn't pay you to come on here. I have some expertise to be able to share with your audience. And a lot of the companies in WordPress have employees, have founders, have people who have a valuable story to share. And that's that earned media. Is like, hey, we're trying to do a story on this. We want to get exposure around this thing. Bring these people on their podcasts, get them interviews for a news article, and that's going to be that earned media that we help people with. So you have earned media, but then there's also a big place right next to earned media where sometimes there is an opportunity for affiliate links or even some of the paid exposure as well. So Cirrus Influence, our primary goal is to help grow the influence of others in the WordPress community. We help get them on different talks, get them to events, get them on podcasts like this. And then, we also help with things like Black Friday's coming up. Are you ready for your Black Friday?
I actually got one of my big projects done for Black Friday just yesterday.
Okay.
I have people that know me know that I'm really big on the uh digital pad, the ink tablets. I use a
Oh,
Remarkable,
yeah. Yeah.
and I use a planner and a journal in that
Mhm.
tablet. And so I make my own and I put it out through one of my projects and let people download it for free, as the lead magnet. And so I
Nice.
got the one for 2024. I got it all done yesterday. And the part that made it so cool was my old one, you kind of had to create page tags and then be able to go from section to section using tags, to be able to navigate the
Yeah.
document. This one's completely hyperlinked, right? And so you can just click anywhere and just go anywhere you want. And it's all branded and all that kind of stuff. And I give it
Yeah.
away. So it's one of those things. But to your point, yeah, it's like, what's your Black Friday? And
Yeah.
now we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And other people are going, dude, it's not even October yet. But
Oh,
you
you're
gotta be
behind.
ready. You gotta know what you're doing. You gotta have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that as kind of our lead magnet, we've magnet, we're working with a few clients and saying, hey, we're gonna do a more of a special campaign with you where it's difficult to make sure that you're on all of the lists. So if you haven't been through a WordPress Black Friday before, essentially what typically happens is all the different media outlets of WordPress, they'll put up their list. These are the best deals. It can be a hassle to get on those lists. Sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not. It's a mix. The different outlets are asking for different things, different ideas and how you're going to be represented. So that's what we do. We kind of make it easy on our clients. We say, hey, we're going to do an onboarding where we meet with you and actually help you come up with a deal. I've seen this happen. I don't know, have you experienced this where someone like, hey, here's our deal. We're giving them a free month away. And you're like, well, you always give a free month away. Like it's not
Yeah.
actually a deal. On the other hand, some people will ask, like, sure, we want to do 90% off. Like, okay, well, you can't do 90% off either because that will ruin you. You can't,
It
not
devalues
everything,
your offer. Yeah.
it can't be a loss generator all the time. What we do are some fun things such as here is the base discount maybe for the week of Black Friday, but on that actual day or that day and maybe Cyber Monday as well, first, depending on the product, how expensive the product is, how fast, maybe the first 50 that buy it from this time and you have a true counter will have this promo code, and that promo code will be good for an additional onboarding meeting with the founder or with additional support or another percentage off, whatever. And that's how we get with those companies, and we learn about them, fall in love with them, what their product can do for clients building websites in WordPress, and we help them design their deal to balance getting exposure, because we got to get those eyeballs, but we can't give away the farm. You can't give away everything. What's going to get people to your website and help them convert? And that's the balance of deals that we help them with as they're designing what they're going to do for Black Friday.
Well, and everything you just described there is not easy, right?
Right.
So it's like people hear it and they go, "Oh, I could do that," and it's like,
Yeah.
no, you got to think this through, man. There's a delicate balance. I interviewed David Valentine, who I thought was
Hmm.
brilliant on the show, and he talked about his outrageous offer and how he's grown these multiple businesses through outrageous offers and guarantees and all those things. But what was interesting was the more I studied his outrageous offer, the more I realized, no, it really is just really taking care of the customer and offering them that 30-day money back guarantee or double your
Yeah.
money if it's not whatever. But like
Yeah.
whatever your outstanding offer is, it's not just having the offer, it's communicating the offer and really using it like the cornerstone of
Yeah.
that integrity factor, without
Yeah.
saying come to me, we're integrous. Because I think
Right.
like the worst thing that a company can do is I used to be in the car business, and one of the people, God, I hope they don't listen to the podcast. They owned an electrical company, right? So like they
Okay.
fixed electrical issues, and all their trucks
Sure.
said Integrity Electrical. And I thought, well, that's
Mm.
the worst name to put on the side of your truck. I really
Trust
can't.
me.
If you got to tell me you have integrity, I don't want to do business with
never
you.
never do business with someone that says trust me. That's your first clue that if they need to tell people to trust them, that's dubious. But yeah, you're right. It's how do you find that balance, and it's difficult, and be sincere, be genuine, not come off too salesy, not come off desperate, come off as such in such a way that you're confident in what you do, and you want to use the thing that you built, this product that you have, and you want to help others, and specifically in WordPress, help them build their websites faster, smarter, more of them, all these incredible tools in WordPress, because WordPress on its own, and this is obviously a source of discussion, but you do need plugins. You need these different things to make your web business run even better. And it's okay, you need a thing. I've got a thing that's going to help you do the thing that you need. How do we connect? Let's find the right balance of pricing, of attention. And I've been breaking up this here's kind of my nugget of generosity right now. This thing that I've been working on. Are you familiar with Donald Miller? He does this thing on how to help people think about you, because it's really important that as quickly as possible, you help people know how to think about you, how to put you kind of in their box of understanding. So essentially it goes like this. There's 3 parts when you're explaining who you are. And this would be in an introduction. And in ways, during your Black Friday deal, you kind of want to put this, and another way to put this is kind of your elevator pitch, but even smaller. So it's in 3 parts. The first part is what the problem is. So you got to state the problem. So that's kind of how I started out this morning, is that WordPress is decentralized. It's difficult to get distribution in WordPress. And so the problem that I'm solving with Cirrus Influence is that piece, is that, oh, yeah, that is a problem. It is difficult to get to my customers. We don't have an app store. That's right. So you first identify the problem. The second part is what you do to solve that problem. So for us, Cirrus Influence, we grow the influence of others. And how do you do that? We do that by getting them on podcasts, by helping them with their messaging, getting them on YouTube channels, finding those places. And actually, there's kind of these 3 media buckets for WordPress. So it's specifically podcasts like this. And this is kind of being on your core WordPress and post status, do the woo, WP Mayor, Master WP, these WordPress, WP Beginner. Those are those WordPress centric outlets. Then you have kind of this periphery of these larger YouTube channels that may have a pretty big audience, but those are going to be used for the SEO, your search engine optimization. So the first one is growing your influence within the WordPress community. The next bucket out is the people who are they don't really even know much about WordPress. They've never been to a WordCamp. They don't care about camp. They just are trying to build WordPress sites. And so that's that bigger one. And then the third one is the hosting companies. Hosting companies have their own media outlets, and they're key for distribution. So those are how we think of WordPress in the different media buckets. So I'll go back to my Donald Miller thing. So the first, what's the problem? The second, what you do to solve that problem. And then the third one is essentially how it feels once that problem is solved. So again, it goes kind of like this. Distribution in WordPress is difficult. We help you get where the eyeballs are in the ecosystem, on YouTube channels, and with the hosting companies, so that you can reach your audience and grow your company. And so it's kind of that 3-part thing. And so that's one of the things that I encourage all of our clients. First thing to do, start thinking of yourself in those terms. What's the problem? What do you do to solve the problem? And how does it feel once that problem is solved?
So as you're describing that, I just need to state how important what you just said is. I have a training project in the power sports industry that I put out. And I put a lot of time into, look how brilliant I am. Look at these wonderful ideas. Look at all the stuff we can do. Look at the tech in the back end as I train your people. And
Yeah.
nobody was signing up. And I'm like, why is nobody signing up for my awesome product? And then I
Right.
was like, wait a minute. The people that need to buy this aren't even seeing the content that I'm making because I'm going out to a different audience. And so then I was like, okay, so I have to change how I get that out. And then I was like, wait a minute, the message doesn't match. Like I'm trying to sell an answer to a pain point that the paying customer, the person who's actually the target market, might not even recognize as a pain point yet. Like I got to educate them on what the pain point is
Yeah.
because they're walking around thinking, well, this is just business as usual. It's always been like this. This is just the way it is. Or, this is the necessary evil of our industry. And I'm like, no, like it's a pain point that has a solution. Let me provide that solution for you. And dude, it took years. So there's no understating what you just brought to the table on the conversation. It's
Mm.
that the perspective of being able to understand what's the customer's pain point and how do you fix
Yeah.
that pain point rather than look how brilliant I am. I made this cool thing. Because no matter how cool your thing is, if it doesn't align or if people can't see the alignment between their pain point and your projected solution, it goes nowhere.
Right. Well, they're not looking for a hero. They don't need you to come in and like, oh, I need a company to come in and save the day.
They want to be the hero.
Yeah, who's the hero? It's the person in the mirror. When they wake up in the morning, the person in the mirror, that's the hero of their story. You aren't their story. The best you can do is to be their guide. You can be their Obi-Wan Kenobi to help them on this perilous journey of business and growth. And they want to know that, yep, you're competent, but it's not about you. It's
Yeah.
about and your accolades and your awards and look at me, look at me. Like, I don't care. How are you going to help me be successful? And if you can put it in that context of, yeah, I know the problem, I get it. Like, yeah, it's WordPress. How on earth do I get in front of these agencies or these different people building websites? How do I do that? Like, all right, well, I do this and I put my Google ads and whatnot. But how I think of it is that exposure isn't just about advertising where you put $1 out and get $2 back in. That's advertising, and wow, if you could do that all day long, then you should just do that and you're great. But that isn't the reality. So often we do these advertising campaigns and look at us and nothing happens. What we do as public relations is we help people think about their brand, because branding is different than marketing. You got marketing as this whole umbrella, advertising is a column, PR is another column. And that's why we call our name Cirrus Influence, is that we want to help you grow your influence
Yeah.
in this, because branding isn't what you say about yourself, it's what others say about you.
Yeah.
And the activity and branding is the activity you do to help them get the words right. how do people think about us? And you have to work on your brand in such a way that people say, oh, that's the company that does that thing that solves my problem. And wow, I need the thing that they have. How do you help people think about you?
Well, and just in basic business terms, I can remember growing up, because I'm old, they used to say, oh, well, your company name or advertising needs to be in front of a buyer at least 5 times before they make a purchase decision. And then it went to 8 times, and then it went to 12 times. And now I'm hearing things like you have to be in front of a customer 15 times
Yeah.
before they consider, a purchase decision with you. And so every podcast exposure, every blog post exposure, every time your logo pops up in a stream, I mean, that's all part of that branding experience
Yeah.
that you talk about. And then PR to me is such a huge thing. The original name to Mañana No Mas was Van Anen Designs and PR. We used to
Nice.
do, back in the old days, a PR.com account and do
Yeah.
publish newsletters and news accounts, in that third party name that we would put out for our customers and try and get them exposure in magazines and stuff. And I had just recently re-exposed that concept to a client. And Adam, the response to me was almost shocking, because it was like, well, isn't that old school? Why would I still do that? And I was like,
Mm.
why would you not do that? No, like, well, who would pick that up? And I'm like, have you ever heard of Help a Reporter Out? Have you ever heard
Yeah.
of any of these tools that are out there to help with public relations and exposure? And well,
Yeah.
how many people are gonna see it? I'm like, well, you have no idea, because you put the piece out and anybody can pick it up. And so you don't know if it's going to end up in a magazine, a newspaper, the Huffington Post, the New York Times. You don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
But then tracking it became a task. So then I had to build all these like
Yeah.
Google alerts to figure out where the articles were going. And
Yeah.
people were so focused on, well, how many hits is that getting? And I'm like, why are we having a conversation about that? Like, I get that people are curious, but there's
Right.
curiosity and then there's like this ROI talk. And it was like,
Yeah.
this isn't about ROI. This is just about getting you consistent exposure and getting your name out and building that influence through constant vision, constant thought.
Yeah, and if you come at it from a point of desperation, of I've got to get everything back out of it, I'm sorry, you probably need to go get a job. Like, entrepreneurial spirit isn't for the desperate.
Yeah.
It's for the people who work hard and are willing to put in the time and realize that this stuff takes time. And just as you said, it can be 15 times. And this idea of top of mind exposure, where you don't know when that moment is going to happen for your client, where they ran into the problem that you solve. It may not be today.
Yeah.
Today's the day they saw you, but it could be tomorrow. And so you need to show up tomorrow as well. The difficulty with PR is that tracking and that numbers. And the thing I have to remind our clients is that all numbers are not equal. Just because you can get on a Facebook campaign and it says you reached 40,000 people or whatever, are those 40,000 people that you really care about, that your product solves a problem for? Specifically around WordPress, that core community of people who care about the project, that are going to the WordCamps, it's estimated there's between 5, 7, maybe 10,000 people at the most in WordPress. We're like, but how is that possible? 43% of the internet is built on WordPress. How is it so small? It's like, well, you have these concentric circles, and in the core is and how many of those speak English, and the different difficulties you run into there. You can make an impact. You can grow your influence through intentionality, and it's approachable, it's accessible. You're not trying to reach 100,000 people. You really need to reach 10% of this core group. How do I do that? Well, first, we're going to grow your influence. We're going to make sure that you're showing up in the right places. And this is an interesting thing. So people will say, well, we did an advertising campaign. Like, okay, well, what channels did you show? We did it with this one outlet. All right. Well, how big is that outlet? Who is their audience? And you kind of learn about that. The thing that we find is the most helpful is orchestrating the exposure. And it feels like magic when it's done correctly, but it is a lot of work to take these different influencers, for a lack of a better term, I can't stand the term, but I don't know what else to call it, people who have influence in this ecosystem. It is very difficult that if you've got a release coming out, hey, we're going to be doing something big, our new product is being rolled out, whatever it is, for you to be able to orchestrate it, that suddenly everybody's hearing about it and all the channels all at once, that doesn't happen by chance. No. That is where someone like us, where we say, all right, we've got the list of 30 WordPress podcasts and news outlets that are actively reaching an audience. We also have this group of hosting companies that have an audience that are willing to work with products. We also have these YouTubers that are going to do videos and do a review or do a versus videos go really well.
Yep.
So just as a tip, be willing to put your product against another product, even if you think their product is better. Just the fact that you are being mentioned in the same conversation as someone 10 times bigger than you is still valuable, because you're brought up to that level with them. So side tip, do not be afraid of comparisons. Comparisons are your friend. But if you've got an exposure that you need to get exposure, it takes the orchestration of a team like what we're doing to have it happen magically. We're suddenly all over WordPress and everybody's seeing us. We're on everybody's socials, and it's on Twitter and on, or X or whatever we're calling it these days, on LinkedIn and all the places.
No, that is perfect. And to your point, saddling up, for me, it's sharing the racetrack, right? Yeah. Sharing the racetrack with people that are faster than me only makes me better, right? So I would go to a regional event as a motorcycle road racer, and I'd place well. I'd come home with some trophies. I got one behind me on the shelf. Nice. And that would happen. And then I'd go to a national, and I'd be out there, and I'm old, so I'm going to say some old names, but like Miguel Duhamel, Doug Chandler, Jamie James, and you drop those names, and people go, "Oh my God, you must have been fast." No, they lapped me every single time, but I got better every time I shared the track with them, And so, if you're in a versus, in some kind of a versus thing, and you're afraid to put your product up, don't, because as you just said, it's that association, the affiliation, it gives you that lift. And it also gives you that inspiration to get better, to add whatever the widget is that it needs.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears just a little bit, because I want to go back to almost like the very beginning of when you introduced yourself coming in, because, we rabbit trailed this thing and you got really specific, and it was awesome. But you focus on WordPress. And part of the reason that I'm so attracted to you and what you do, besides your stunning great looks and your taste in beverages, is I was one of those people. I got into WordPress in 2004. So, and I didn't realize this until very, very recently. Like, I had just kind of meandered through the WordPress community. I had my own agency. I was building websites. At one point, Von Anna Designs and PR in Albuquerque, had a couple hundred websites, all startups, getting everybody going. I was doing social media integration, all these things. But at no point did I associate with other WordPress developers, implementers, or any agencies. At no point did I get involved in WordPress meetups, or I didn't even know it existed. And then I was a client of Lifter LMS, and Lifter LMS brought me into their fold, and kind of said, "Oh, well, there's this and there's that. And hey, would you come to this WordPress meetup with us? We're going to do some speaking at this thing, or we're going to," and I was like, "Sure." And then I started running their mastermind, and I got involved with the group there. And then they took me to my first WordCamp, and my head exploded. And after that WordCamp, I started joining a couple of Facebook groups that had these groups, GoWP and things like that.
Yeah.
Adam, the part that struck me through this whole experience, because it was like a rebirthing almost, right? It was a totally new adventure. And one of the groups in Facebook said you had to say what your WordPress username was and when it was founded to get into the group. I don't remember which group it was, but my name is Von Concepts, and I went into WordPress to find out what it was, when it was, and it said 2004. Wow. And I was like, well, wait a minute, WordPress is only 20 years old, and I've been in this game for 19 years. And it's only been the last 3 or 4 that I've even had remotely an idea of what the community could do. And that's a huge regret to me, because think about what I'm doing now. I'm on got this podcast, Lifter LMS, WP Tonic. I'm talking to you. I go to WordCamp. All of these cool things are happening now, and I'm in my mid 50s. Imagine if I would have done this in my mid 30s, late 30s, and where this could have gone.
Oh man.
And it's not a regret, because life is life. What's water under the bridge, silver lining, be a leader, find a way to find the positive. The positive is that I'm meeting people like you, and we're finding inspiration to add that value to others, to say, hey, this is a wonderful, wonderful community. This is the time to jump in. This is the time to, become an influencer and join the party instead of being an outlier. But how did you get inspired to focus on WordPress? Go from a principal to, I'm going to focus on
Yeah.
WordPress and help this community.
Oh man, yeah, we buried the lead. Because yeah, the definition, what is the reason to get involved in WordPress? So yeah, kind of just taking a leap back. So my background is in education. I was a teacher, a school principal, always a bit of a nerd, always had some type of a side project where I was building a website for someone or doing something like that. And so WordPress, yeah, it's that thing. And then my entry to WordPress and how amazing the community is and supportive was the post status Slack. So to give them a little bit of credit,
You went right to the top.
yeah, the post status Slack is one of the most valuable Slack groups, regardless of industry, where you can go in and ask a question about a thing, and I will like, wow, I hope someone answers that question because that's a good. And 10 minutes later, someone is. What'll be funny is, oh, I built that widget or that plugin. Oh, I'm the owner of da da da. How can I help? And the influencers of the influencers are essentially in that Slack oftentimes. And kind of how I talk about it is, so we have these word camps, and some people who may not be familiar, there are regional word camps all over at all times of the year, but there are three big tentpole word camps. You've got WordCamp Asia, WordCamp US, and WordCamp Europe. And they move around, on those continents each year, and they do one of those big ones. And that I got a chance to go to WordCamp Europe in Portugal, and that was one of my first WordCamps, and it was just an amazing experience where I had talked to these people online, maybe on a Zoom call, but then you get to meet them in person.
Yeah.
And those in-person opportunities really helped give me context for the larger project. And this project that's built on the backs of volunteers, people who say the democratization of publishing is important, and it shouldn't be behind a walled garden of Facebook, or at the time AOL or Prodigy, whatever those were at the time when the web was getting going. Yeah, man, I had my Prodigy account and all that good stuff, but those have gone away. And I am very thankful that WordPress as an open source project exists with a community that is vibrant and willing to hop in and help get you where you need to go.
Yeah, that is tremendous. That's for me. I mean, I left San Diego. That was my first WordCamp last year. And then it was WordPress meetups. I was going to the regional ones in person. I was hitting some on Zoom. Dude, I've gone to the one in Seattle. I've gone to the one in Coeur d'Alene. I've gone to the one, I spoke at one in Pennsylvania. And to your point, it's a giving community. There's a tech one out of the Inland Empire in Southern California. So they have one that's a normal WordPress meetup, and then they have another WordPress meetup that's like a more of a technical troubleshooting one.
Okay.
And Steve Kinsey runs that. Steve is like a dog with a bone, dude. Someone could be their first time caller, right? Comes in, it'll be a Zoom thing, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm having a problem with my website. This page is a white screen of death, or this is that." He goes, "Hey, let's do a screen share, man. Let's figure this thing out." And he jumps in and he tears it up. And he's been on the Zoom call till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning with some folks.
Wow.
No cost, no charge, just paying it forward, just doing it, And I can't speak highly enough of people like that, because that to me is kind of what keeps it all together. It's nobody jumped in to help me with Wix when I tried Wix.
No.
Nobody jumped in to help me with Squarespace. When I had a client on Squarespace and they wanted to have something like 8 or 9 emails, because it was like, I want the info at, the sales at,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Marjorie at, the accounting at, the, and I was like,
Yep.
okay. And then I went into Squarespace, and at the time they were like, well, that's $15 per email address,
Per email.
per month.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so your Squarespace account, is going to go up to $600 a month. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And she's like, that's
Totally.
crazy. You don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, let's just go to WordPress and do something simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point of, you've got these people who are given their heart and soul to help others. And this is one of the problems where I think that, again, someone like us who know the people can help. You can go to a WordCamp and try to sell, 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 and it won't work.
Nope.
And this is a frustration point for companies because they're used to these big events. One, these events the WordCamps are $50 a ticket. That does not cover the cost because they are sponsored and run by volunteers. So you have companies that sponsor your ticket, and then the event is put on by volunteers. So first off, a company that is saying, "Hey, we need to grow in WordPress," and they try to like bully their way into it and buy their way into it. That doesn't go off well. And then they come in and try to be all salesy at these events, and people are put off by that.
Yeah.
And so the thing that we try to encourage is go to these events with curiosity. Just learn about others. Like, what are they doing? Ask good questions. Be an expert at question asking. And you will get so much further than tell you about myself. Question asking is really important. That curiosity and how can I help? What are you working on? I'd love to be able to connect you with this person or this thing. And potentially during that conversation, it might come around to how you can help. Maybe your product, maybe your thing does solve that. And don't get me wrong, business takes place at these events, but first and foremost, it is a word camp. It's it's a kind of a strange name for a professional event because it's a camp. People are going there to learn how to do stuff and have fun with their friends. I do kind of joke that typically we have the idea that business takes place on the golf course. Why is that? Well, people like doing business with their friends.
Yeah.
And that's another way to think about. But if you go to the golf course and you're excel, sell, sell, like, no, you're there to play golf. You're supposed to have fun and then get to know each other. Same thing at a WordCamp. You're there to get to know each other, have fun, and learn about what people are doing. And then this kind of magical thing happens if you take the opportunity that people like to do business with their friends. And we coach people on what to do before, during, and after a WordCamp, because you need to do something. All three of those pieces are very important if you're going to have WordPress be a part of your growth strategy.
Yeah. That's like that famous quote, right? All things considered, people do business with someone they know, love, and trust.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
So as we begin to wrap kind of this up a little bit, you said something before I think we hit record and went live, and you
Yeah.
just touched on it again. And that was talking about the importance of that connection. And that's part of what you orchestrate, right? You were talking about the levels of communication. And I can't repeat it all because I can't get it as good as you could. It was like something about frequencies, gigabytes,
Right.
gigabytes, or something.
So I have this thing, this communication matrix, and I need to write a blog article on it, and I'll get around to doing
You could
that.
write a
But
book on this one.
I could write a book on it. But essentially, you've got these 4 levels of communication, and I break it down in how our brain receives the information and in how much information. And loving computers, you start with kilobytes, and that's going to be the written word text. So actually texting and email, and that's perfect for facts. If you want to share facts with someone, do that. But if you've ever tried a text messaging chain where you go back more than 3 or 4 times because someone can't figure out where we're meeting at this thing, so you're texting, no, I meant that. Okay, then you need clarification. Clarification is going to be over voice, so audio, and that's in megabytes of information. Your brain receives megabytes of information over a phone call, an audio book, podcast. you are getting clarification. And that's the type of thing when stop texting and pick up the phone because you need clarification. The next one is video. And what we're doing now, we've got a video podcast. And I think of this when you need understanding. When you want to understand something, I don't know if you do this, but when I don't know how to do something, I go to YouTube because someone's going to show me a video of how to fix my windshield. I did that the other day. I was like, I got a crack and I want to make sure I fix my windshield correctly. And yeah, this great guy had this, nice little video. And then that gave me understanding. Video comes to us typically is measured in gigabytes of how we receive that. But then the creme de la creme, the best thing you can do is to be in person. And that's when you want connection. When you want to connect, don't connect, try to connect for the first time, if you can, over an email. Like I was thinking about this. How do you avoid having cold emails? Well, you get to know the person in person at a WordCamp, and then you're not a cold call. That's how you don't do cold calls, is you meet them in person first and you build a relationship. Obviously, you can't always do that, and you do the best you can with what you have. But if you want to connect with someone, you do it in person, and your brain is taking in terabytes plus. It's just the place where you're at, the look and the feel, the smells, all the things. Your brain is taking in so much information, and that's how we connect with each other.
That is amazing. So, folks, I hope that you have taken away from this last 45 minutes that Adam knows what the heck he's talking about.
Or I'm just good at faking it. That's good too.
He's great at faking it. Dude, I thank you so much for coming to the show, because finding good guests, people that watch the podcast note that I don't do this every week. It's because I don't find great people every week, right? Yeah. When I find great people, we do a show, and you're one of those people.
Thank you.
And I want to value your time, but as we close this out, tell our listeners, our viewers, dude, how can they get in touch with you and find out more about maybe what you could do for them, especially if they're in that WordPress space looking for that exposure?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the last thing on the good guest thing is part of one of the services we offer to our clients is if a company is of any size, is we will interview between 5 and 10 people inside their company that have solved a problem, that do something interesting. And we build a profile around them. So this is, for the first month, we're getting to know the company and the people inside the company. And I build this profile. And as I meet people like you who are doing interesting things, I will identify people within that company. Hey, they've got a good story. And oftentimes the person who's the best guest isn't the person who would say, hey, I want to be a guest. It's the person who's like, oh, well, I could. And that's the person you really want to talk to. So that's also a big part of PR, is pulling those stories out of the people, pulling them out of that company. Hey, your company has people that do really cool things. Maybe, yes, it's a WordPress company, but they have really good HR. They've got someone who's really good at building culture, remote culture. Maybe that's what you want to have, someone who's on your, as a guest on your podcast. So that's another part of that, is we pull the stories out of people. We even, before they were to hop on a podcast like this, or if they were doing a talk, we even do some prep. Hey, how do you speak eloquently in front of an audience? Fears, people's greatest fears. I always remind them, what are you most afraid of? And it typically goes in this order. Spiders are people's greatest fear, public speaking, and then death. Typically, people are more afraid of speaking in front of an audience, even doing something like this, than they are of dying. And those people need some coaching, need some encouragement. Hey, you've got a story. Let me help you with that. And I encourage them to do Toastmasters. Maybe you can't tell it, but I've been trying to get better at this whole speaking good thing. I do Toastmasters, and that has been helpful. We coach people. How do you get in front of a microphone? How do you get in front of an audience and share your story? because that's all people really want, is they want that connection and they want to hear your story. And that does take practice, and we coach people through that. So how do you find me? LinkedIn is a great place. If you're in the post status Slack, that's also a really great place. And cirrusinfluence.com, Adam at cirrusinfluence.com. That is my email address. And we would be happy to have a conversation. And even if that conversation is simply, hey, tell me more about this WordPress thing, I can direct you. That's one of the beautiful things about WordPress is I now know a bunch of people and people who solve a bunch of problems. And that's we're kind of those connectors is, hey, you need to talk to this person, or, oh, that's your problem. Let me introduce you to so-and-so. And that's also kind of the secret sauce behind what we do in public relations is the introductions to the right people at the right community in the right place.
Yeah. And you know what? Taking advantage of those introductions, I mean, that can shave a year, 2 years, 3 years off the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And they want to meet you, and they're interested in what you have to learn. And it's like, oh, if I could only have a relation, build something with a hosting company, come talk to me. I know hosting companies. We're good friends. They're neat people. They also need content on their media outlets. Maybe you have a story. Maybe you'd be a good connection. And yeah, that's what we do.
Perfect. Folks, that's it for me and Adam Weeks on this episode. We're getting close to having almost 100 episodes, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Nice.
We're going to let this one go. Adam, wave goodbye to the audience, and we'll see you next show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.